All right, what is up, everybody? MCool40 here. I told you guys I had a spicy Crusadia deck list for you, and we have just that. A couple things, though. First off, before we dig into this deck, number one, you all want part two of the metagame discussion. I'll try to get it filmed for Wednesday/Thursday. Probably go up Thursday, honestly, because I have a feeling that tomorrow is going to just be infinite V-Jump news. So that's something to look forward to. Number two, I made a point on the first metagame discussion talking about Mech Knights starting to feel power creep. Everyone took that as, oh no, they're being power creep. No. Their age is starting to show, and that's something that I think a lot of people need to understand. When you fundamentally look at Mech Knights as a deck and the things that they do, they're not totally power crept yet, but they're starting to show their age. I think people need to understand that. Like, they're not as good as they once were. And that's what I mean by when I fundamentally talk about something like Mech Knights in general. Is, yes, things aren't going to generally power creep themselves, but in the grand scheme of the way that the format is starting to shape up, decks are not as good as they used to be. Like, resilience is starting to go down to an all-time low for some of these decks. And that's what I mean by when a deck is starting to show its age and kind of starting to power creep a little bit, the deck will still see play. People will still play the deck. Representation will still be there, not as much as it once was, but it's going down the very dark path, slowly starting to retire. So we'll see how it goes. I'm expecting the deck to still be here for a while longer more. So I think people took that as the wrong way for that. Now, number three, I also made a point talking about Crusadia, and I said that this deck was seeing a little bit more play initially than Cyber Dragons. And the reason for that, and this is, I've been to 3 locals, and all 3 of them are in different regions, different players attend. And I've noticed one thing about all of these locals. Crusadia are doing relatively well in these locations. I was starting to wonder, I was like, why is Crusadia, of all things, kind of starting to do well? Well, besides having an FTK running around fucking up the consistency ratio of everything right now, this deck has one of the best main deck uses for Kaijus in the world. And the only thing that we care about with this deck is, you give your opponent, your opponent makes an effort to play the game. You're like, oh, that's really cute, and then you just Kaiju them. And then you proceed to just go Equimax attack over your opponent. I would argue that this deck is one of the easiest decks to play in the game, and also sometimes one of the weirdest. And when I say weirdest, it can double into the hardest realm of speculation as well. Because when you're playing this deck, if you make one misplay, you're going to mess up. Now, I would argue once again, when you're going down your skill trees and things like that, and your once per turn effects, like, don't mess them up, because the deck is not that rewarding for things like that. So, in general, Crusadia is one of the best decks at the moment that you can play for the going second aspect, and then punish your opponents for doing what their decks want to do. Now, that's without the FTK being around, but I do think that we've seen more resilience come from this deck than some of the other decks that the OCG was trying to mess around with in their formats. And I think it's relatively cool that we have the chance to still sit here today and look at Crusadia as a going second deck to kind of counteract the meta. I mean, let's be real here. Droll and Lockbird is one of the best cards that you can use against the FTK. I mean, you use this before they get to Azathoth, and you're like, I mean, they can still FTK, but like, you gotta make their lives harder. So, this is my friend Nick's list. He sent this in, I was like, oh, hey, we'll talk about this, because this is some interesting stuff here. So, 2 copies of Ash Blossom. I mean, you're playing an FTK, like, and a going second deck, like, or you're playing a going second FTK. God, why did I say FTK? So, it's pretty important that, like, you have hand traps, but, like, you control your variables. Now, of course, triple Arborea, once again, this whole deck's main thing is just special summon from a zone that you point to, climb the link ladders, put out that additional damage for things that you need to do. So, triple Arborea, Crusadia, you control, be destroyed by battle. Card effect banishes from your graveyard instead, so this is the floating protection. Draco, special summon from Ham. And then you can target one Crusadia in your graveyard except for Draco and add it to your hand. So this is going to be your core floater. Leonis, special summon once again from your hand to a zone it points to. Target one Crusadia Link monster you control. It gains trample, essentially. So, one of the more important things we need. Now, Maximus is the one that is really the important one. He grants double battle damage. So, if you're on Leonis and Maximus, whatever you're punching through is really important. Now, it doesn't really matter with Maximus because your opponent's 95% of the time going to have a Kaiju. So, I mean, you're going to get that free burst damage over your opponent. 2 copies of Regulus. Target one Crusadia you control, one card your opponent controls. Destroy them. It's a free Icarus attack, essentially. Double copies of Prankatops. I like this one because, once again, going second deck. All right, what do I want to do? Draw this, special summon it, pop a back row. That way I can play my Crusadia hand the way that I want to play my Crusadia hand with no real retaliation from my opponent, right? That's what we want. 1 copy of Doggeron. You are playing Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, so you do need some sort of Kaijus. Now, Triple Drone Lockbird, this is what I was talking about. This card is actually really good right now. Stopping the FTK from doing FTKE things before your opponent Azathoths is where this is probably going to go on the mantle in terms of importance. And I think Droll is very underrated at the moment, but I do think that it's a card that you want to see in your hands. And of course, 2 little Kaijus and 1 super Kaiju. I mean, you have 4 Kaijus to kind of pull from. It's really important. Now, this deck is playing 2 World Legacy Crowns. You can special summon this card from hand in defense mode to a zone of Link monster you control points to. Okay? Once per turn, when a monster on the field that was special summoned from the extra deck activates its effect, quick effect, you tribute this card to negate it. And if this card is normal summoner, yeah, I don't care about that. What we care about here, another 2,000 that you can special summon under an arrow that equal max points to, and you get a free buff. Of course, 2 copies of Called by the Grave. I don't want my opponent to have a hand trap and try to be kinky and stop me. Like, we're not feeling that today. And then, of course, 2 copies of Crusadia Power. Target Crusadia you control. That Crusadia monster is unaffected by other card effects except for its own. Woohoo. Just quick play, make sure that we Eagle Booster don't deal with stuff. Of course, 500 buff under Revival. Crusadia Link monster gets that, and then it can attack all your opponent's monsters, like free OTK banter. And of course, 1,000 Eyes Restrict. This is just another card to suck up a potential threat. Climbing Link ladders. The whole 9 yards, actually. 1 copy of Slumber. Once again, you're a Kaiju-based deck for OTKs. You want to make sure that you are, quote-unquote, making full use of your resource pool. Of course, triple Mind Control, taking your opponent's resources, taking them to your own, climbing your own Link ladders. 1 Monster Reborn for generalized win cons. 1 copy of Rhoda for searchability. 1 copy of Hornet Drones. I don't know why you wouldn't want to play this. Like, Hayates and this are just free climbing the ladders. And then World Legacy Succession for revivability to make sure you're killing your opponent. Now, the extra deck, Sky Striker Engine's been pretty much solidified in this deck between the 1 Hayate and the 1 Kagari, just for what you're going to be climbing Link ladders with. Of course, 1 Link Karibo, 1 copy of Cerberus, 1 copy of Phoenix, and then the number of Kaiju, or the number of Crusadias, is pretty basic, actually. We have 2 copies of Regulus, triple copy of Magius. I know a lot of people like 2 Magius, but I mean, looking at his extra deck here, he's got room for it. 2 copies of Equalmax, 1 copy of Borlode, 1 Naturia Beast, and 1 copy of Thousand Ice Restrict. Now, with the side deck coming into play, you get access to Naturia Beast. Naturia Beast is actually a powerhouse, contrary to what 95% of the community might think right now about as being like, oh, I have to play bad cards to make Beast. Depends on the situation. But Natty Beast is a really fucking good card. Stopping your opponent's spell is so detrimental at the moment. Side deck, we have 2 copies of Ghost Ogre. Once again, Ghost Ogre's not a bad hand trap. Now he's citing triple Rescue Cat and 1 Valfralan. Honestly, Beast Tuner. Hi, my name is Naturia Beast. I think this is cute, don't get me wrong. Especially if you can set it up and just blow your opponent out of the water. I mean, if you can set up an Equalmax and stuff too, for like the extra backup, why not? Of course, triple copies of Twin Twister to kill back row. 1 Crusadia Vanguard. 2 copies of D-Bearer. Thunder Dragons are a bit of an issue, but I mean, not as big of an issue as Altergeist. Like, getting that free negate off of your opponent's field to make sure that you can stabilize and do what your deck wants to do. Like, that's everything that we want, right? So this is Nicks Crusadia list. I hope you guys do have an interest in this. Mess around with the ratios and things, see what you got, and we'll try to get part 2 of that discussion up either tomorrow or Thursday for everybody. Alright guys, the ride never, well, truly ends. Thank you, patrons. Without you guys, I don't know what I'd be wearing in these videos. I might be a truffle shuffle incident all over again. Guys, please also check out Vanquil40 for some awesome Vanguard content. Some other interesting stuff you might find up here on the left or in the description as well. Thanks for watching.